Hello, guys, and welcome to Miss German Let's Talk. Here we dive into the wildest, funniest, and also the darkest Reddit stories we can potentially find on the internet. So grab a drink, sit back, and let's get right into today's episode. So we have one Reddit user who is asking the question, what's the scariest thing that happened to you at 3 a.m.? And I know you guys, Halloween is coming up. There are some people who are there and looking for that one episode with the horror stories and so to speak. So keep keep your horses down, guys. Keep it down, keep it down. We gonna like explore what's going on at 3 a.m. at your places. Okay. In a bit, I just want to tell you, do you guys remember there was a time on YouTube where some couple of years ago, the trend of like 3 a.m. was so big that they tried anything and everything to make word work. Like, I don't know, the fidget spinning that started at 3 a.m. So why are people actually that afraid of like the 3 a.m. number? It is just because that's apparently where ghost activity and the devil's hour is at the highest at like 3:33, because it's like the 333, this kind of number. So it's kind of a conspiracy theory in my eyes. But let's have a look at the scariest kind of 3 a.m. stories that you guys have. So there's one user who writes, this happened a year ago. The comment is basically 8 years ago. My family was all asleep at 3 a.m. when I awoke to scratching at the front door. I peeked through the window to find a beaten, bloody young woman sitting cross legged on my front step, staring back at me. And this is how the episode starts. Are you freaking kidding me? That is concerning. I hope that she was real. It was my neighbor. Oh, okay, she's real. Her left eye was swollen shut. She had a laceration on her head, and I opened the door and tried to get her to come inside. She was extremely drunk and hardly wearing anything on this winter, windy, rainy day. She was babbling and not making any sense. I called 911, but when she realized I was calling for help, she screamed and climbed over my chain link fence, flopping onto the ground. She ran down the street, flailing at her arm and screaming. I thought her boyfriend had beaten her up. They had been known in the hood for domestic violence issues. Come to find out, earlier that day, she got rip roaring drunk, then tripped and hit her head on concrete. The laceration on her head actually had stitches in it already, which I couldn't see in the dark. When she got home from the ER, she stole her roommate's whiskey and pounded most of the bottle. Then she just went berserk. Well, guys. Well, it's not a crazy, scary story, but honestly, it's just a sad story. It is sad to see that a young woman who's going through domestic violence and there is actually nobody really helping her, that she goes that insane. I hope she's now getting the help and that she's not like drinking and trying to get off her frustration. I hope she got the help that she wanted to, but it's really sad to hear such a thing. Okay, next story we have here. When I was less than 10 years old, my brother and I were home alone one night while parents went out for a few hours. We're both sitting in the living room relaxing when all of a sudden we hear a barely audible voice from down the hall. We both just looked at each other and froze, making sure we had both heard it, but we were too scared to check it out. You know, guys, have you ever had this experience with one of your siblings that you were all both alone at home? I had this, and you hear something, you hear a cracking noise or whatsoever. You both look at each other, and you know you need to get armed, you need to get ready, you need to do something. Like, I had this once with my brother, but then it turned out that it was like my neighbor who was in front of the house, and they had just like a really loud family fight, and yeah, they were Italians, so that was quite of a spectacle that we didn't know if we should like call 911, because one had like a knife and stuff, but it turned out that he didn't do anything and they were fine. And after like 1 or 2 days, the two who fought in front of our house, they were best friends again. So I think it's just like a family thing. So they were quite a fine. That was just like a story on between my story between the actual story, but like the sibling thing, or actually there is something that you guys heard but it's not real, and you go and you arm yourself to like whatsoever kill. So sometimes, in most 99% of the cases, there was nothing. So just a little story on the side, and we continue. A couple minutes of silence went by, then suddenly we heard it again. Only this time we heard it more clearly because we were paying more attention. It was a voice, but there was something weird about the way it sounded, and we couldn't understand it, almost like it was speaking some kind of gibberish. My brother got up and stepped into the hallway. I reluctantly followed. Hello, he called out. After a moment of listening for movement, nothing. We carefully walked further down the hallway to where we had heard it and looked around. No signs of anyone. We looked around a bit more and then started to walk back into the living room when suddenly we heard it again right behind us, making me jump. But we realized it didn't sound like a person talking inside the house. It almost like it was coming out of a walkie talkie or something. Like when there aren't any low or high frequencies in a sound, just the staticity, distorted mids. And still, it was speaking in some weird language I couldn't place. We looked at each other, and now more puzzled than scared, but my kid brain started coming up with all sort of creepy explanation. Maybe there is someone in the house, but they left walkie-talkies out somewhere, and our complice was communicating with them from outside, asking if we were alone so they could come in and sack the place. We kept looking around the area and were completely stumped as to what was producing the sound when it happened again, and we realized it was coming from directly above where we were standing. We looked up and saw the fire alarm with a small flashing red light. It was trying to tell us to change the battery, but the language was set to French. Oh wow, come on, guys. French is not that much strange of a language. You really, you see, first of all, there's always an explanation to those kind of things, right? So, but really, French, do you really think that is such a gibberish language? Come on, guys. It's not that bad, okay? Let's start with the next story. Okay. My dog was going ballistic at our side door. I yelled for her to come to me, but she refused to leave and kept barking, which was really unusual behavior for he. Okay. As I come down the steps, I see a big ass dude standing on the other side of the door, fiddling with the knob and trying to get in. My heart stopped. I asked what he wanted, and he paused and looked at me surprised. I thought he hadn't realized I could see him. I wouldn't have been able to if I hadn't been on the steps. He said he was looking for somebody. I tried to sound harsh and said I already called the cops. He called me a bitch and turned and ran off into the night. What scared me the most was he knew I was awake and he knew the dog was in there and he still tried to come in. That only tells me he had a plan for dealing with us or was crazy enough to not care at it. I realized I forgot to include that my dog is big. She's a 98 LBS, Black Lab, and German Shepherd mix. This wasn't a Chihuahua he was ignoring. That is a very strange story, so to speak, right? So, like a random dude comes in and tells you he's looking for someone and he knows that you guys are in. Like, wouldn't that is kind of creepy. Like in the sense of you don't know what that person wanted really, because it seemed to me like when he seemed to know that you're in the house and also the dog starts barking and there are people and he knows it, then was there a specific reason he came for it? Or imagine, tell me guys in the comments below, and we continue with the next story. And now we continue with the last story for today. Last night, me and my bro were talking in the living room when out of nowhere we hear a music box. Neither of us own one, but it was creepy as fuck. Spent like 1.5 hours looking for it. We just jotted up as the wind. So the thing about music boxes is I feel like they have like some kind of frequency that people try to communicate through it. It doesn't need to be ghosts. I don't mean like ghosts need to communicate for it, but like sometimes there can be like problems in the communication, and then they like pick up other things that other from another person's house or who is nearby, right? Because it's the same thing with Bluetooth. Like sometimes I'm living in an apartment and I'm getting like connected to my neighbor's Bluetooth who's watching like Instagram or a YouTube video or stuff like that. So this is quite possible. It doesn't have to be paranormal in any shape or form. But there's a user who responded to him telling his story about another music box, saying music boxes are creepy as fuck. When I probably around 13, my cousin and I decided to play with an Ouija board. Okay. Yeah, guys, this is where I say you really, really don't have to do such a thing. But all right. It's really creepy. It's not just creepy to play with it, but it's also wrong, especially if you're like a religious Christian person and everybody, literally everybody, tells you to not play with it because it's not fun to do such thing. Okay, it's not fun. I lived with my grandparents, and my room was in the attic. There were a bunch of built-in bookcases that housed misks, shit that I never bothered to clear out when I moved into the room. One of the things of the bookcases was my grandmother's music box. It was a small plain box. When you opened it, a ballerina would twirl around with the music box. Oh, I always wanted such a thing. They're actually really cute, the ballerina ones. Always wanted those. But it was so old that it didn't work anymore. So for years, I picked it up for times to times and opened it, but the music wouldn't play and all the ballerina wouldn't move. Anyway, my cousin and I, we decided we try to contact spirits with the Ouija board, which is of course a good idea. What do you think? Just fucking around like kids do because we were bored. Yeah, and then you do this. So we sat Indian style on the floor with the board between us and asked, "Are there any spirits here with us?" There was no answer. If there was, we wouldn't have known because we were both kind of pushing the planchette around, trying to freak each other out, just laughing and fucking around. We may have asked a few more questions and then we decided to get serious. We swore to each other neither of us would move the piece, no more laughing, and we tried to be reverent, and we'd ask another question. So we asked if there's any spirits here with us right now. Can you give us a sign? All of a sudden, sitting 5 feet away from us, on the bookcase, my grandma closed music box started playing music. My cousin and I looked towards the music box, looked at each other, screamed at the top of our lungs, and booked it the fuck out of the room and down the stairs. I don't remember anything weird happening in the days that follows, but I was so afraid to be in the room alone for a long time after. To this day, I'd probably the creepiest, most unexplainable thing that has happened to either of us, we will never forget. And that's the reason why you don't play with those things. Neither on Halloween, never on things. Keep yourself away from those things because they are not safe, little kid. They are just not safe, okay? They are not safe, my little kiddos, okay? And with that said, ladies and gentlemen, that's it for today's stories. I hope you enjoyed the episode. If you did, don't forget to like and subscribe my channel. I'll be back soon with more crazy Reddit stories, maybe with a special on Halloween. See you next time. Bye.